to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a saying. Come quench my thirst, Lord, because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. Water for the thirsty. I drink.
It's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You will find them when you seek them with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. Cause the time is coming soon when every eye will see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst. What the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink. Refreshing ink flowing out of cups. It's like they gotta touch to liberate them out of cups. The faith is undivided trust created us up out of dust. He's worthy of fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give her honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who decide to drink it
You're
up.
like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Been a hard weekend, it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer, I need you in my life. Time seems crazy, I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty.
Because all of these people participate with us and are part of what we do in various forms and fashions. They're just not usuals on the couch. Yes. So that's why they're the unusual suspects tonight. Tonight with us we have Davina, who's been with us on the couch before, but she's following along with us this time for the year. I mean, she's done it before, but this time she's actually doing it every day, almost every day.
I failed before.
Right, so that's why this year is a different experience. She's trying this year to make it all the way through with us, all the way through till December.
Yes.
Also with us tonight is Avanique, who's also filled in with us on the couch before. Hopefully it won't be a fill-in and it'll become one of the usual suspects. Thank you for coming through. And also with us is Anika. Now, the thing about Anika is I tried to get Anika to be one of the usual suspects, but because of work situations and other responsibilities and engagement, because she's a busy young lady, she couldn't make it. So every time I can get her to come, she's obliged. And so we're grateful to have her here tonight. And she brought Richard. All I know is that his name is Richard, and I'm just glad that Richard is here. Richard, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Alright, so Richard, you know what we do here? So it's for the sake of Richard, I'm gonna go through what we do here. Richard, I think I may have told you this offline, but I'm gonna tell you again. Davina, Avani, Anika, and I are reading through the Bible together. And sometimes Davina has questions, sometimes Anika has insights, and sometimes Avanik just kind of wrestles with some stuff. But when they do that at home by themselves, they don't really have anybody to wrestle with, ask their questions to, or share their insights with. But Anika always has somebody to share with. But sometimes it's good to share with others, to us to be inspired. So we've created this forum to allow them to talk, and me, because I have my own questions as well, sometimes, to talk about the things that we're learning, the things that we're sharing, the things that we're experiencing, for it to make sense. And we learn tips and tricks about how to navigate the Bible, things about versions, and how those help us to make sense of what we're reading. We learn little things about language and all kinds of other things as they come up. And sometimes we get stuck on certain topics based on where somebody is and what their current place is in spirituality and the Lord and their experience. And so sometimes we sit there and linger there to kind of walk with them in those spaces. Okay. So it's really just conversation on a Friday night about the things that we're reading, to kind of make reading more manageable, more interesting, more productive, more meaningful when they go home on their own. Right? So that's essentially what we do here at Water for the Thirsty. Welcome to those who've joined us online, including Keith and Vixilla and Kelvin. Patricia, welcome you guys. Thanks for coming on. But you guys who are online, we're also allowing you, or not allowing, we're also inviting you to join the conversation through the chat log. We're following it there on the screen so we can see your inputs, and we want to bring you in the conversation. So Davina, you had a question about numbers.
Okay.
Just before we were getting started.
Yes.
Please share.
So we're on numbers what? We're on numbers 5 and 6. Mm-hmm. So we're 6 chapters into Numbers, and my question before we started was, is Numbers literally going to be about numbers the entire chapter? Because thus far we've seen a lot of numbers as the Israelites are being divided into specific tribes. God is telling Aaron to divide them into specific tribes, and men of a certain age, and this many men and this many tribes, and it's just a lot of numbers going on. So I've never read Numbers personally, and so it's interesting now reading Numbers, and I'm seeing a lot of numbers, and I want to know as I continue to read, because Numbers has 36 chapters. We're going to have 36 chapters of Numbers. I'm okay with that. The Bible has been here a long time since I came, and so it's okay.
That's
but
a
I'm
good
just
question,
interested to see, because thus far, Genesis, Exodus, even some of Leviticus has been a story. Mm-hmm. So now we have a lot of numbers going on, just dividing people up into different tribes. So that was my question.
Anika, have you read Numbers before?
I have.
Do you have any good news for her?
Well, Numbers.
Is she destined?
Numbers was really hard. I think when I first read it was difficult, but going back to Genesis and Exodus, I remember God telling Abraham, I'm going to make you a father of many nations.
Mm.
And so when I started reading Numbers,
So these are the nations.
I was like, man, look at the promise being fulfilled.
Okay.
And I'm just seeing all of these people, this multitude, and I just remember, wow, Abraham didn't see it himself, but we get to see this promise being fulfilled. And it just reminds me of the fact that there's so many things I may be praying for that it takes a long time for it to happen, but the promise is happening. It's coming. And so sometimes I look at it, man, I was like, man, all these numbers, but I'm like, but all these numbers.
Yeah.
But because God told Abraham, look at the stars. Mm-hmm. You won't be able to count the seed that or the multitude. Look at the sand on the sea that the sand that you're walking on. I'm going to this will be your seed. Okay. And even after Numbers, we still look at us. Look at all of us who have come from Abraham, And so sometimes I go into it with that mindset of, wow, I'm looking at this promise being fulfilled. Wow, the Lord said, record, like I'm just at Numbers chapter 4, verse 2. It says, record the names of the members of the clans and families of the Kohathite division of the tribe of Levi. List all the men between the ages of 30 and 50 who are eligible. I mean, just the duties of divide. There's just one clan.
Yeah.
And he didn't even get to the other clans. Yeah. And I'm just like, wow. Okay, let me read more. Okay. And I get excited because for me, I'm looking at something being fulfilled. And I'm like, wow, God, what are you going to fulfill in me? And I just read it with that excitement. And it makes it come alive for me.
Are you encouraged about reading Numbers?
Oh no, I'm definitely enjoying. I'm enjoying it. I'm just not. Math is not my strong subject. So when I start seeing all these numbers, I will admit I kind of just breeze on through it and try to get to the rest of it. So I just kind of breeze on through it. I was looking for the verse. I should have had it up. At the end of it, once everybody was divided into tribes, it said how many people there were, and I'm just thinking. That's a lot of people.
Yes.
And I mean, and are they still in the wilderness at this point? They're still on their 40-year journey and they're still grumbling? That's a lot of people to grumble. That's a lot of complaining. And then
that was just the men.
Yeah, and that was just the men.
And that was just the men over a certain age.
Between this 30 and 50. And so I'm thinking, man, Moses had to be a strong man because you have all of these. Well, at some point, he wasn't the only person, I guess, in charge. God gave other guys to be in charge because they were all coming to Moses at one point, saying, this thing happened to me, judge. And so God put other people in charge. But still, that's a lot of people, I guess, in this camp. I mean, you live in a house, and your wife, your children. Yes.
A lot of toilets to flush.
There are no toilets.
To bathe.
Diapers.
To
yeah. I mean, where'd they get the food from? There are no grocery stores. I mean, are they just
food on the
planting?
ground every morning.
Manna.
Oh, they're still getting manna?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's food on the ground every morning.
I mean,
it's interesting that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's interesting that you said that because when I was in Israel this summer, I started just going through the wilderness in Jerusalem. I was like, oh God, I can't talk about the children of Israel anymore.
You were grumbling too?
Yes.
Why were you grumbling?
Just to walk. Oh my gosh, going through Jerusalem and walking through. I was like, I can't complain because honestly, with our guide, I was complaining.
Why were you?
I was like, can we please food? I was hungry.
Oh. You wanted some manna?
I wanted some meat.
I was like, when are we going to get food? Like, when are we getting food? He's like, no, we ate at the breakfast, but that was like 3 hours ago. I was so hungry.
Wow.
I mean, I literally just walking, and when you would see the path, I mean, in the Bible, it maps out the path. I said, I don't understand how they did this. Like, the complaining, I said, I will never say anything
that was
about the
hundreds of thousands of people.
And we were just like 20, 30. We were just and we were irritating that we were complaining. Can we stop for a toilet? He's like, no toilet, we will not stop for the toilet. I was like, can we please just stop?
And I'm just thinking about men, you have one wife, and some men can't handle the one wife. Imagine the Bible days, they had multiple wives, and they're out in the wilderness, and all of these women are coming, grumbling at them.
Yeah.
And where you could, you may go to your man cave, you may go out and go to your homeboy's house. Where were they going? Where do you go? Would you go to your tent and zip it up and say, don't come in? What do you do?
That's for real. And that's why probably some of the men went to Moses because they just wanted the noise to stop.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And then, another interesting part to me with Numbers, just the specifics of the tabernacle. The tabernacle.
Oh, yeah.
All the specifics. Bring us this specific animal and sprinkle the blood this way and put on the earlobe and don't come in this place and let your hair grow this way and God was very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't understand some of the specifics.
What does that tell you about him?
Yeah.
He's a God of order, number one. And not only is he a God of order, he had justification for being specific. You know, we may not understand it because, and one thing that I've been learning about reading this, I'm reading it from Divina 2018, but this was a long time ago. And so, you know, when it says about a specific bird and a lamb, I'm reading a message, so it says a yearling, so I'm assuming that's a 1-year-old. I'm just like, wow, it's so specific. And I mean, of course, God had his reasons for that. And I think in the Israelites, he was trying to help them with obedience. Help them with obedience. And to know, you know, this is what I said. Just like parents, you know, when I say don't touch the stove, it's for a reason. You know, when I say bring a 1-year-old lamb, it's for a reason. You know, don't bring me a lamb that's defected or whatever. So it's for a reason. You know, I don't understand it, but, you know, God had his reasons.
What does that mean for you when you think about your experience with God now and the things that you understand him to be asking of you? How do the two correlate?
Most definitely.
Okay. How?
For me, I know one thing that I believe God is working with me on in 2018 is patience. I'm not a very patient. Patience is not my virtue. I'm not a very good person with the process. And so with them building the tabernacle, it was a process. You know, he said, this person bring the sticks for this. This person bring the circle, this for this. So everybody had their role. And I'm like, but if you didn't feel like bringing the sticks today, and I have these... So I'm not very good with process. I would just go out and get the sticks, but that wasn't my job.
Correct.
And actually, 2 of Aaron's sons got killed for doing something they weren't supposed to do.
Yes.
I would have been the one that got killed because I'm not very good with process, and I'm a very independent person.
Right.
Marriage is helping me with this process. My husband is very patient. He and I'm just not. And he's helping me, and I believe that God brought him into my life to help me with patience and going through a process. You know, in the classroom, I'm a teacher, so in the classroom all day, you know, I'm in charge.
Right.
But when I come home,
take off that hat.
it's a very humbling experience.
Kind of bow your head a little bit.
Yes. And I have to learn that, you know, he has his way of doing things. I have my way of doing things, and his is not wrong, mine is not right, mine is not wrong, his is not right. It's just we are individual people. So, you know, when I read this about the specifics that God was giving the Israelites when they were building the temple, even to bring an offering, the different offerings, it's like, wow, it's amazing. And I mean, to come with the wrong thing, and once because he told it to Moses. He said, Moses, now go tell them. So there's no reason for you not to know, because Moses is telling you. Now, was it written down somewhere also? Because I know 10 Commandments was written. So did he just go tell them what God said, or was it written somewhere so they can refer back to it?
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
In terms of your thinking then, when you were reading this, are you believing that it was a matter of detail or a matter of obedience?
Obedience. Because the Israelites had a problem
Are the two different?
obeying.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
In terms of
before you answer your question, I saw you put your hand up to try and get in, and I love that you were being polite and all that kind of stuff. But what happens in this environment is that if you wait to get in, you'll be sitting on the sideline for a while.
I almost started saying something. I was like, did his hand go on?
Just a heads up.
It's like double dutch. Just
jump in. Yeah.
Okay.
When the rope goes up on your side, you just...
All right.
Well,
Well,
opening.
in that particular case, then, I would simply say they are separate.
Okay.
In a matter of obedience, especially when it comes to God, He is expecting unquestioned following of His directions. Why you think they were in the wilderness for 40 years in the first place? Because they didn't follow His directions in the first place. and they ended up walking around in a circle around the place they were supposed to be in. Had they obeyed in the first place, well, I would have gone.
You could have took them on a straight path.
But the
detail.
Yeah, go ahead.
But in detail is, I mean, he could have made it as specific or as unspecific as he wanted. I specifically think it was more or less as, you did not listen. I am going to teach you what it is to exactly listen. So I am going to get as specific as possible. And you have your job, and you have your job, and you just talked about those two boys of Aaron. They learned the hard way. They paid the ultimate price.
God used him as an example. Oh, you don't want to obey? Let me show you what happens when you don't obey.
That was a scary example, though. the two sons.
Oh.
I was like, man, poor Aaron. And the guy was like, you can't weep.
No, you can't
mourn your sons. I was like, man.
And they were supposed to eat some celebratory food, and they opted not to eat. Because they were mourning.
Yeah.
And Moses was like, so, y'all didn't eat the food. God said he needed to eat the food.
And they're still being disobedient. At that point, they're still being disobedient.
But Aaron explained why.
Like,
but Aaron explained why, and then Moses said, okay, well, I'm good.
Yeah, she did.
I'm good.
I was like, man, God.
But it's not even that's not even the only time. I mean, you have Uriah. I mean, Uzzah. Uzzah. He said, "Don't touch the ark. Do not do it. The ark gets ready to fall over." But I would just wanted to let it fall. You gotta touch.
Trying to help you out.
But I just wanted he touched the ark to keep it from falling. Uzzah's dead.
He didn't listen.
So I will agree that God is detailed and specific to teach obedience. But I will push back a little bit and say the reason they walked around in the desert is because they didn't trust God. And less about the disobedience and more about the distrust. And the distrust probably led to much of the disobedience.
Okay.
But that the distrust was the root issue.
Yeah.
And you actually, because we haven't gotten there in numbers, I didn't want to necessarily skip ahead.
No.
But
Don't skip ahead.
But when you get there, you'll see what.
Okay. I'm gonna
see
go
why
backwards.
I'm making that point.
I'm gonna go backwards.
Okay.
I still struggle with this, and we've talked about it before. We wrestled with it before in our previous on the couch discussion. I don't understand how you could not trust God. He got you away from Pharaoh. You saw all of the plagues.
600,000 men. If each man has a wife, has 1.2 million children. I mean people. If each couple has a child, just one. How much more people is that? That's another 1.2 million, right? Oh, 600,000 at least. You have that many people in a place with no water. In a place with no water and snakes and scorpions. That many people. No food, no way of getting food, and no clear timeline, no clear direction. You know, it's not like we're following a GPS and we can gauge where we are in the journey. We're just following this guy.
Well, we're following this cloud too.
We're following the cloud. The cloud is there, but the cloud is not raining down food. You know what I'm saying?
You ain't even engaged personalities, egos.
And then you have people who weren't even. You have Egyptians that left with them.
That's right.
Yeah,
so they're probably whispering in their ear,
like,
y'all should have stayed. Y'all would have been better off just staying as slaves.
Should have had some deer meat back in Egypt.
so I'm just saying, you know, seeing the Red Sea is one thing, but when the reality of your new situation hits, it's
something different.
We don't always make the connection between one experience and the other. We see each experience as
a separate entity.
Because we have our own Red Sea experiences that we can point to, and then we come up with a new experience and we go, can I go back to Egypt now? At least in Egypt, I didn't have to deal with this. You know what I'm saying?
That is because they were comfortable in Egypt. They were taken into a place where they were no longer comfortable.
I think honestly, I think this is a Nickology. They were so used to the bondage that they were in that it was hard to break out of that bondage. Like, this was a 430 years. And it was generation after generation after generation after generation. That's all they knew. And now you're taking them out of something that I know where my food is going to come from. I know. Even though I'm in this slavery, that's okay. I know I'm going to eat. I know I'm going to get water. Even though when Moses was coming to deliver them, the hardship, I mean, it got harder and harder, but they still, we don't read that any food was taken away from them. We don't read that their homes were taken away from them. We don't read that their necessities were taken away. The work got harder, but they still had they still felt they were still taken care of. And when you come to a place where you're enslaved in something, like, that is bondage, and that's what they were used to.
Tell me more about their comfort and why you think they were comfortable.
Just exactly to her point. They knew where their meals were coming from. In the wilderness,
where's my food coming from?
Yeah.
Out here.
I mean, and when they got tired of men, okay, well, we want something else. Well, where is that going to come from? It was always a matter of, there was the grumblings of, well, we had this when we were Egypt. We had this when we were Egypt. We could readily go get water. Yeah, we had to work, but we had a roof over our head. We had food on the table. We could go and, do whatever was necessary. So they may not have liked it, but they were comfortable with that particular situation because they knew things were coming to them. When they're out in the wilderness, you think of the grumbling, the malcontent, the complaining. They did not necessarily know where things were coming from. Now that goes to their distrust in God, which, as you say, may have then led to their disobedience when the instance where they were supposed to cross the Jordan. So I mean, and this is now just coming all at one time. I'm not prepared. I can see the timeline, just as you were saying. They're angry at their lack of everything that they were used to having, so they're now complaining. Okay, well, maybe God, we had it better back there. So automatically now you're thinking, okay, our prior situation was better than what God has brought us into. So automatically off top right there, it's like, no faith. None. No faith, no trust.
Let's double back to Exodus chapter 1, firstly. Exodus chapter 1, and reading from verse 12. What version of the Bible you have it, Ebony?
New Living.
Okay, perfect.
What verse?
Exodus 1.
1 from verse 12.
Exodus 1. Where's Exodus 1?
From verse 11. From verse 11.
Let's just do this.
Okay.
Mine's is chronological, so Job is like in the middle of it. What's the verse again?
Exodus 1 from verse 11.
Okay. Am I reading?
Mm-hmm.
So the Egyptians made the Israelites their slave. They appointed brutal slave drivers over them, hoping to wear them down with crushing labor. They forced them to build the cities of Pithom and Ramesses as supply centers for the king. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread, and the more alarmed the Egyptians became. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands.
Alright, you can stop there and skip to chapter 3, verse 23. Chapter 2, verse 23. End of chapter 2.
Years passed, and the king of Egypt died, but the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. They cried out for help, and their cries rose up to God. And God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He looked down on the people of Israel and knew it was time to act.
Alright, now skip over to chapter 3 and read from verse 7.
Exodus 3, verse
7? Yeah, just 7.
Okay.
Then the Lord said to him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I'm aware of their suffering.
So that's some big words there. Suffering, distress,
oppression,
Pain.
Doesn't sound comfortable.
The slavery part was uncomfortable, but their living.
They were not comfortable. They weren't comfortable in Egypt. They weren't comfortable in the wilderness.
They just didn't trust God.
But I think there's some aspect of it, like the unknown can cause cause anxiety. Like with me, if I know, I'm very routine, so I know what I'm gonna do. Like when something out of the blue happens and it changes my schedule, I get a little thrown off, and sometimes it's hard for me to readjust myself. But I think a little bit of that ties into it as well. Like they knew their routine, like this. Yeah, we're miserable and we're unhappy here, but now we're in a totally different situation where we're just walking and I'm just eating bread.
We're miserable, we're unhappy, and we don't even know what's happening next. At least we build our bricks all day, but we go back home and we spend time with our family, we eat dinner, we go to bed, we wake up. You wake up tomorrow morning, you build some more bricks. That's our routine. We were not happy, but we had a routine. Now we're here in the desert, but in the wilderness.
Now you don't have the bricks, the oppression, all the things that
we
you
don't
were
have
unhappy about. All the things you were unhappy about, you no longer have.
Yeah.
You've been delivered from the situation that you complained about. Right?
Okay.
You just, but it seems like you've traded one set of situations for
another.
For nothing here.
Because you don't have that problem anymore. Now you have a different problem. So that's why I said I wouldn't necessarily say they were comfortable. I'm just saying in this situation, their priority was such that in their estimation of what is best, they thought based on their priorities, that situation was better than this one.
The lesser of two evils.
Bam.
You know?
Okay.
So we have some comments from the group online. Lorraine says it's like someone in an
abusive situation
that
would rather stay than leave. And then Keith said that's a great analogy. Daniel adds, it's hard to escape from a prison when you don't know you're in one. Do you know you're going to say something?
I mean, it's just like slavery back in the day. Black people, they were slaves. You know, when freedom came, a lot of them chose to stay because they didn't know anything different. You know, I pick cotton all day, but in the evening time, I go home with my wife, my children. We eat pig's feet or intestines or whatever they ate, and you go to bed. You wake up tomorrow morning. I'll pick some more cotton. At least I get to go home. I know where I'm gonna have food.
So it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, but if you release me to be free, where do I go?
But that's what you've been begging for the longest, though. Like you got what you asked for.
I don't know where to go or what to do. All I know is how to do is pick cotton.
Because it's ingrained. You're ingrained in that the mental slavery.
Keith says, I think in our own relationships with God, we do the very same thing. That is, lean towards distrust quickly, or as soon as things get a little uncomfortable, forgetting where He's brought us from or out of.
I agree.
I would like to argue that or emphasize the point that it's an issue of perspective. And I want to jump ahead a little bit to Deuteronomy chapter 8, so that we could look a little bit on how God saw their situation and how they could have seen their own situation. But let me set the stage. This is the second generation of people, not the ones who actually left. Some of them may have left Egypt. Most of these people have grown up in the wilderness, and most of their parents have died off.
So it's the children of the original crew.
So it's the second group, the group that's actually going in the promised land.
Are you doing verse 2?
Let's start reading. You want to read?
You know, it's funny. Like I pulled it up and I was like, I highlighted it because Jared brought this up. What was this, a couple months ago? You were in the group.
Deuteronomy chapter 8. Go ahead, start from verse 1.
Be careful to obey all the commands I am giving you today. Then you will live and multiply, and you will enter and occupy the land the Lord swore to you to give your ancestors. Remember how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for these 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character, and find out whether or not you would obey His commands. Yes, He humbled you by letting you go hungry and then feeding you with manna, a food previously unknown to you and your ancestors. He did it to teach you that people do not live by bread alone, rather we live by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. For all these 40 years your clothes did not wear out, and your feet didn't blister nor swell. Think about it. Just as parents disciplines a child, the Lord your God disciplines you for your own good.
All right, you can stop there and skip down to 15. Wait, no matter. We don't do that. because that's making a whole different point. I wanted to use this to only talk about perspective. What perspective did you see there that was different from what we were articulating?
We were saying that they didn't have food, but he's telling them God gave you manna. They were complaining about various things, but he's telling them that, in 40 years, your clothes didn't get old. You have to sew them up. Your shoes didn't wear out. You've been walking for 40 years, and your shoes didn't give. I mean, what are we grumbling about?
I think another perspective that I see is God was testing you. Mm-hmm. Like God was trying to check your character. So that's something I see there.
Doesn't that go back to the obedience and trust and God thing? Your friend Keith makes a very good point. So there's a very good reason God allowed the children of Israel to endure bondage for 400 plus years. Key word in that entire thing is allowed.
Mm-hmm. Let's skip over to Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14. I had to Google that.
While you're looking at Matthew 14, like in Deuteronomy where it said that he was testing and to see if you will obey, like one of the things that I always notice in Numbers, at the end of almost every section, it says, and Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded. Almost every section. And when you were talking about the detail in the tabernacle, or counting each tribe, they did exactly. They did just as the Lord commanded, and that always stood out to me. I was like, do I always do just as the Lord commands? Sometimes I might say, well,
let me try this one
I'll
first.
do this. Well, I'll do a synopsis of what you're asking, Lord. I'll just do a summary of this 10-page document, the thing that you would like me to do, and I'll just summarize it and I'll get the key points. But no, like they exactly as the Lord commanded, and like through this journey, they're learning the obedience. Like we went through Numbers, but they're learning this obedience and detail. And I'm like, man, I wish I could do just as the Lord commands, because sometimes we want to do our own thing. But God gave us a template. Like he gives us the word. He gives us something to follow, but yet we still want to do, well, maybe the Lord really means. Maybe it's okay. God, here's my favorite. The Lord knows my heart.
Yeah, he does. He gave it to you.
Anyway.
Sorry, I really meant Matthew chapter 11. Matthew chapter 11. Matthew chapter 11 from verse 1. Another perspective again. That's what we're looking at.
When Jesus had finished giving these instructions to his 12 disciples, he went out to teach and preach in towns throughout the region. John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. So he sent his disciples to ask Jesus, "Are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else?" Jesus told them, "Go back to John and tell him what you have heard and seen. The blind see, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor." And he added, "God bless those who do not fall away because of me."
All right, stop there. Do you see any correlation between what we were talking about and this story? No? That's a good honest answer.
So John was pretty much, John was the one that pretty much was preparing the way for Jesus Christ to come, and Jesus came and John was sitting in prison and he was like, hey, are you the Messiah? Because I'm sitting in prison right now, like,
and you didn't come.
And you're not even, so.
What about Jesus' response in terms of, and how does that, do you see any connection between that and Deuteronomy 8 that we just read? Jesus' response to him.
I kind of think that his response was kind of, I don't know.
It was indirect.
It didn't, he didn't really respond to his question. He was kind of just like, all right, I'm just going to talk about something else.
Well, I felt like preaching, like, he knew what the Messiah was coming to do. He preached it. He knew. He's like, well, this is what's happening. I think the people around expected the Messiah to come and overthrow the throne. And I think what he was saying, don't mistake what you hear or what everyone else is saying from what you know the Messiah is really supposed to do. This is what's happening, and you know that this is what what you've been preaching.
This is the evidence.
This is the evidence. And just because you're in an oppressed situation and you want to be rescued from that, don't be confused by what you're hearing other people say, because you already know the purpose of what I've come to do.
Adjust your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, I think in an essence too, like the children of Israel were like, this is uncomfortable for us, and John was like, this is uncomfortable for me. Mm-hmm. Jesus was like, oh, I kind of have my own thing going on. Like, I have a grand plan.
And you know what it is, but
you just got to be uncomfortable.
And because you're uncomfortable, and because you had a purpose, and you know what your purpose is, you know what my purpose is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Make the correlation.
You know what you're here to do, and that was, I think he was telling him without telling him, and he knew. I don't know. I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I'm getting the words
With John, though, he had a purpose. Like, his purpose was clear. So then I submit the question: what was the purpose of the children of Israel? Did they? I don't see where they would take that understanding of a purpose outside of learn some faith, learn some obedience.
Let's go to Exodus. Exodus, to answer that question, and then we'll come back to Matthew chapter 16. Exodus chapter I think it's 19. I think it's 19. Hold on. I normally highlight it, but I didn't highlight that day. Alright, here we go. It is 19. So Exodus chapter 19, go from verse 3, Avani.
Then Moses climbed the mountain to appear before God. Oh, I was supposed to do that. Then Moses climbed the mountain to appear before God. The Lord called him from the mountain and said, give these instructions to the family of Jacob. Announce it to the descendants of Israel. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians. You know how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now if you will obey me and keep my covenant, you will be my own special treasures from among all the people on earth. For all the earth belongs to me. And you will be my kingdom of priests, my holy nation. This is the message you must give to the people of Israel.
Keep reading.
So Moses returned from the mountain and called together the elders of the people and told them everything the Lord had commanded him. And all the people responded together, we will do everything the Lord has commanded. So Moses brought the people's answer back to the Lord. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud, Moses, so the people themselves can hear me when I speak to you. Then they will always trust you. Moses told the Lord what the people had said.
Right, you can stop there. What did you understand them to understand their purpose to be?
A great nation, a holy nation.
Yeah, they understood what their purpose is. I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
They entered into a covenant to be that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, and it's funny because I think it's been one of my memory verses in the class with my students. We would do everything the Lord had told us to do, but then they didn't.
but in addition to that, God said, you will be my special people, and you will be a kingdom of priests to all the other nations. If you don't listen to what I'm saying, how am I going to use you to be a kingdom of priests to other people?
That's very easy to overlook.
I mean, he told them. He
Very
said,
good.
"You have seen what I
That's
did to
it.
the Egyptians."
And
You saw what I
them,
did.
he gave them the opportunity to back out.
Yeah.
He said, "This is what I need from you," and they said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
we got you."
No, they said we would do everything, not a piece of it, not a quarter of it, not a half. We said we're gonna do everything.
And then a week later,
Yeah.
I'm hungry. Where my water at?
Chicken.
So that is interesting.
Okay, yeah.
So at least they understood their purpose.
No, okay, yeah. I never even thought of that.
Matthew 16. We're staying in perspective. I'm doing 3 different stories to make a point about the story we were talking about originally. Matthew chapter 16, around and about verse 21.
From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem, and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the 3rd day he would be raised from the dead. But Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying these things. "Heavens forbid, Lord," he said. "This will never happen to you." Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view and not from God's." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you want to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul?
Mercy.
Is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father and will judge all people according to their deeds. And I tell you the truth, some standing right here now will not die before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom."
And connections between the 2 stories before that we read before? Well, the 2 passages we read before, the Deuteronomy 8 and the one about John the Baptist.
Now it's more so of John understood his mission. The people of Israel were told their mission.
They agreed to their mission.
They agreed to their mission. And the disciples are now being told, here are the guidelines. Are you down?
Or not.
Are you not?
Mm-hmm.
That is it in plain and simple. Interesting.
One thing that stood out to me, I mean, I'm not talking about the correlation. Just one part that stood out to me. But Peter took him, and him is Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Aside and reprimanded him. Who is Peter to reprimand Jesus? It's just like Julian taking you aside and reprimand you. What? Excuse me, sir? What is that about?
He was well intentioned.
I wonder if his heart was in the right place.
Well,
you're the Son of Man. This can't happen to you.
Well, so Peter, I think if we go back 1 chapter, Jesus asked Peter. I think it's
Same
chapter.
chapter.
It's the same chapter.
Just a little bit verses up.
A few. Oh, was it? Because I think Jesus asked him like, who do you say? Who am I? Do
Verse
you know
15.
who I am? Is it?
Verse 15. Same
Oh
chapter.
yeah. He says, Jesus asked like, who do you say I am? And Peter says, you are the Messiah, the living God. And Jesus said, you are blessed, Simon, son of God, because my Father in heaven revealed this to you. You did not learn this from any human being. So now I say to you that you are Peter, which means rock, and upon this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom. Whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven. And then he turns around and says, "Get thee behind me, Satan."
Well, that shows how.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, I understand like where Peter's coming. Like, whoa! You're the Messiah. You're the same person. I just said you're the Messiah. But so how is this going to happen? But Jesus understood his mission, and he understood the same spirit that revealed that to you. Now there's another spirit that's trying to use you to get to me, and I think that's why Jesus rebuked him, because it wasn't really Peter that was speaking. That's my understanding. When I read that, he's saying, not you, Peter. You don't realize what you're saying. You don't realize you're being used right now. So I have to rebuke the spirit that's speaking.
So we talked about this in our girl group meeting one night, because I kind of had some questions. But if you remember earlier, you were saying that they kind of thought the Messiah was going to come and conquer and take over. And so Peter was like, "What are you talking about? Like we're about to we're about to take over the town. Like we're about to take the throne." And Jesus is like, "There's a greater plan. Like you see things from one point of view, but that's not really what I'm doing." So it was the same thing with John. John was like, "Listen, you're the Messiah, right? So I'm uncomfortable right now. Like what's happening? Are you gonna overthrow the jail and get me out?" And God was like, that's not a part of my plan. So I mean, it sounds harsh, but like
but that's
to me,
how it happened.
right. Like Peter was like, "Listen, God, it's not really gonna go down that like." It's not gonna go down that way. Like we're it. And Jesus is like, you don't even understand what's going on right now.
Same thing with the Israelites.
Yeah, I was about to say, in all three of the stories, everybody knew God and Jesus' power and who they were, but nobody seemed to trust him. I mean, God did the plagues. He got you out of from the Egyptians. Mary the widow, she don't trust him. John is in jail. He's questioning, why am I here? How you gonna get me out? Peter, Jesus telling him I'm gonna die. He's like, no, you're the Messiah. You don't know what you're talking about. Relax, dude. It seems like God has shown himself. He's shown who he is. John and Peter knew he's the Messiah, but they still didn't trust him.
See how diverse the situations are.
It's
how the issue is the same.
It sounds like a root. Now, if I'm going to boil this down, I'm going to boil it down to one thing. It honestly sounds like in every story, you're given a directive. You are asked if you wish to follow this directive. Now, we as humans, as it's shown in every single story, we a little fickle. But I'm trying to get. Hey, come on now.
A little bit of credit.
It's just a little bit of credit.
Everybody agrees to it, but then they don't do it.
But a root thing in that is they don't do it because they see how hard it is, and they do not have the trust, i.e., faith.
Yes.
In God. To be like, all right, I know I said I'm gonna do this, and it's rough. There's some scorpions over there. There's a snake behind me. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I got
water.
the jailer right there. There's a dude in the corner who want to beat me up, and I want to get out this jail. Lord, I thought we was about to take some swords and go handle some business now. No, we need to have as much faith as possible because we, as humans, we cannot understand.
There's a grander plan.
Thank you. There you go.
So, in response to that, I want to pull some of these comments in. I know I have to go back a little bit. Lorraine had said from earlier in the conversation, it's also like a prisoner who leaves prison as well. Some will do whatever it takes to get back in because they don't feel they fit in the regular world, while others would jump at the opportunity to change their life and never go back again. Jared, you're right that it's a matter of perspective. No man can serve two masters, love one and hate the other. Instead of realizing that you're a foreigner or visitor of your situation, you see yourself as a citizen of that prison. Ms. Helen says he wanted to take the visual account for their answer. Or I guess she was talking about John the Baptist when she brought that in. No, Laurie makes a good point. That's all of us. They trust him. They just don't trust his plan. I wonder, and this is just me wondering out loud, can you trust him if you don't trust his plan?
I don't think so.
An immediate answer is
no.
If you don't trust his plan, do you even trust him? Can you?
So I think sometimes, I think the struggle is we don't see or know or understand the plan, and we want to know. Like, I'm a planner. If anybody knows me, I'm a planner. I have 3 planners. I have a planner devotional. Like, I plan, and when I don't plan, my whole day is thrown off. Prime example. Someone invited me to.
Hold on a second, Lorraine. While Anika is talking, can you do a little novel for us about? Can you do a little novel for us about the difference between trusting God and trusting His plan? Because you said yes in response to my question. Daniel. That's better, Daniel. Can you hear us any better? Is that any clearer? Go ahead, Anika.
Okay. And I'll talk up Daniel. I know I talk low. So one example, like I was invited to someone's wedding party, and I didn't put it in my planner, and I forgot.
Ooh.
Like, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I literally have to know the plan. I have to know the plan. Like, if someone's like, you know, we're gonna do this, okay, what's the plan? We're just gonna go, oh, okay, so what's the plan? And then sometimes like, okay, fine, I'm good with the plan. I just need to know when we're eating. Like, but I have to know the plan. And so for me, my struggle sometimes with God is like when God called Abraham, he said, go, if you look at Genesis, he said, go to the place I will show you. When God does that, like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like,
What you mean you gonna show me?
What is happening? Where we go? And sometimes it's really difficult because we say we trust God, but God takes us and like, just go where and do
I'll
what?
show you.
And we have to learn. Sometimes God just gives us a peace. And if you look at Abraham's story, he said, I will show you this place. And then he said, I'm going to show you this place, and I'm going to make you a multitude. And then he said, I'm going to make you a multitude of me. Like, he kept unveiling more and more and more of the promise. And Abraham just trusted. We have to learn that sometimes God just gives us a peace. He doesn't unveil the whole thing. We have to trust without seeing. That's what faith is. Like, we don't need to see the whole thing in order to trust what God is doing in our lives. And when we get to that point, I think we will really we will have a revelation in our relationships with God that is unfathomable. But the more we have to see the whole thing, the more we're going to have this tug and this pull. Yeah. It's very hard for God to just do and work his magic. He's going to keep doing it.
You have to have more faith.
You gonna say something, Rachel? I saw you.
Oh no, I was pointing at her because she made a very good point. She said, I mean, now we're kind of impatient, but I mean, like, we want to know everything up front. So we're like, okay, and if I can see the whole thing, all right, it's gonna get hard around step 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm. And then we want to tell God how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, God, no, don't do it that way. No, but God, I think it'll be better if.
That's why he doesn't reveal to us the plan.
Exactly.
Because if he did reveal the whole plan, we would try to make alterations to his plan.
Like Abraham did.
That's one of the reasons.
And with Hagar. And look at
Ishmael.
Look what happened there. So,
what is funny, while you were talking, I thought about Joseph. Like, I don't think not that I don't think. The Bible has no indication that he knew what was going on his entire life. Like, life was just taking him on a journey that was it could have been miserable for him, but God had a greater plan. And had Joseph not just trusted God and, you know, was like, listen, I'm gonna ride or die with Jesus, God, no matter what comes my way, the whole country would have just starved to death.
And Joseph also could have been a bitter slave. You know, his brother sold him into slavery.
He would have never gotten to the place that God needed him to be.
Yeah,
So
if he was
preserve
better,
the whole country.
Yep. Revealing, even if you look at the small little things, just in him interpreting the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker. If he was like miserable in there and he hadn't done that, later on they would have never. I know someone who can interpret. Just in him having the Spirit in him, just doing what God asked him every step of the way, opened up, just unfolded God's plan because of who he was, walking in God's will. And that's all God asked us to do.
And he had multiple tests.
Multiple.
Potiphar's wife. And that's the one I was thinking about. Potiphar's wife.
Sure.
What if, you know, because growing up, the church, Sabbath school, whomever, for me, made it seem like, you know, she just came to Joseph one time, hey, sleep with me. But when I'm reading for myself, it says she came multiple times and he continuously said no. That was a test. A lot of people, men, not people because I'm a female, men would have failed that test the first time. But because Joseph...
I'm probably gonna walk away the first one. The second one, I'll be like, she comes back tomorrow.
But I mean, because Joseph was walking with God and he never strayed from God and he never, unlike the Israelites, grumbled, you know, man, my brother sold me into slavery. He could have had so many bad things to say and just been a horrible slave, a horrible person, and he would have never revealed the true God to all of those people who were watching him. Imagine how the story would have turned, you know, if he had been like the Israelites, grumbling and just been a miserable person.
We might not have read about Joseph.
Lauren brought some clarity to her point. She says, because we trust in his power, and I guess that's what she meant when she said we trust him. We trust in his power, his love, and etc. But God's plan involves other people too that he also loves. So sometimes you are on the receiving end of things that may be extremely uncomfortable. So that is where not trusting his plan creeps in. So I guess I can see that where, yes, I believe you can do everything, but I'm just not sure you'll do it in this instance because you're trying to work something for somebody else through me. Keith says, we literally have to adopt a childlike faith. When you're a child and your parents say go, you just go. You don't ask questions because you trust your parents with your life. But this comes through relationship. So I wanted to come back to this one line in Matthew chapter 16, verse 23. It's the end of the line. Jesus says to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. And to me, that is the line that ties all of them together. Because when John the Baptist was in jail, his concerns were not God's concerns in the moment. And Jesus' response to him put his mind, what was intended to put his mind back on God's concerns, as you had rightly pointed, the concerns he had preached about and was aware of. So you didn't have to answer him directly. You reminded him of God's concerns to answer his question. The same thing is when we read Deuteronomy 8, Moses is telling the people what God's concerns was, what he had in mind, why he answered their prayer, what appeared to trade one set of problems for another. And he showed him what his concerns were. I was testing you to see if you will do what I say. I was testing to see if you trust me. And if you had paid attention, believing in me, you would have seen the ways I took care of you and made your uncomfortable situation as comfortable as it could have been given the circumstances. You know, to show that I was actively there. That your shoes didn't wear out, that didn't stand out to you? That you didn't notice that? You wearing the same shoes? Imagine you were a child when you left Egypt.
You grew.
You grew.
And your shoes majestically grew too. Magically grew too.
Because there was no Nike out there.
There were no stores along the way unless God was raining down shoes from heaven like the manna.
I mean, I'm sure
but the Bible didn't say that.
You know, material to adjust their shoes. I'm with you. The point is,
it's provided.
When you adjust your perspective to the concerns of God, you see your situations differently.
New lenses.
I think though, because if you look at Job's story, I kind of feel like it is important. I feel like it's in the Bible because there has to be some sort of importance to it. But it's okay to sometimes be like, okay, God, what are you doing? I think it's okay.
Reveal to me.
Job, throughout Job's story, Job never cursed God, but at one point he was like, listen, I'd rather be dead. I'd rather not have to go through this. And I know for me, I'm hard on myself when God will ask me to trust him with something, and it's a tug of war inside my mind because but God, I want to fix it, and I want to fix it now. And God's like, I need you to just relax. So I think there's nothing wrong with going, man, this is kind of frustrating to deal with. Well, let me word it better. I think that there's a reason why God gives us emotions. And I think that as a believer, sometimes it's important to acknowledge, okay, God, I'm a little bit frustrated right now. I get what you're doing and I trust you, but I'm just a little bit frustrated. And that for me is a process. Like I'm getting to the point where I'm comfortable just saying, okay, God, I feel a little anxious. I know what you're doing, but the anxiety is still sitting on my chest.
I would co-sign on that and argue that that's what you see a lot of in David's Psalms that we've been reading. You know, that he starts off or may even experience a lot of frustration, but he always closes out saying that
giving praise.
You know, and one of the things that tends to happen sometimes, that can happen, it's a risk that we take. And I'm first of all agreeing 100% that we are, because God wants to have a relationship with us, being able to express that to him is something that he would want us to do. I'm just saying that there's a danger sometimes of going overboard.
Yeah, definitely.
Because one of the things you see with Job is, as he continued dialogue with his friends, God had to step in and say, look, listen here, son.
Yep.
You don't
Where
even
were
know
you?
what you're talking about.
Where were
And
you?
shut him up.
And
you see the same thing with Jeremiah. I'm going to find the text in a little bit and find it. But Jeremiah was told, if you start saying things that are more productive, I'll let you continue working for me. Because after a while, his frustration, his crying out, started to become, you know, a little... It started to borderline on, one, disrespectful, two, you don't know what you're talking about, like Peter. And three, it had potential for him to slip into a place where he wasn't, you know, he may started to have distrusted God. And so that's one of the things that we need to be careful of as we do it. Now, Vexilla asks a question. What do you do when you're not even privy to the existence of a plan? Some are informed, but given limited info. Does God always reveal the existence of a plan?
No.
I think
That's the second part of that's the last part of the question. No, God doesn't always reveal the existence of a plan. Everybody agreed on that?
Yeah.
But what do you do when you're not privy to the existence of a plan?
I think there's always like a grand
Yeah,
plan
there's always a
in
plan.
life. There's this story that I heard. What's the pastor's name? It's something Morris. Morris Venden. And he was talking about how pretty much Satan made an accusation against God in front of the entire universe. And so God now, there's a trial in the universe of Satan's accusation against God, and God is pretty much looking for faithful witnesses to be witnesses, to stand up on trial and say, okay, yeah, I've dealt with such and such and such and such and such and such, and I've been able to still faithfully follow God. So I think the grand plan is that, well, I think a part of the grand plan is that God needs witnesses to vindicate his character, but there are other plans that some way tie into that master plan that we have no, like, I decided I was going to drive a different route to your house just because I didn't want to take the route I know. And all of a sudden I get to this one location and the road just blocked off. I had no idea why it was blocked off. So I had to just turn around and go the way that I said I didn't want to go in the first place. But there could have been something up ahead that would have been devastating for me. And it's like, God, there will always be something that God has in plan. You may not know it's happening, but something's working and other people are being impacted by it. Other people are being touched by it. Other people are being blessed by it. You may not know what's going on, but it's always a part of the God's grand plan.
Davina, you were going to say? Sorry.
That's okay.
In response to her question, what
Yeah,
do you do when you're not even privy?
There's always a plan. There's always a plan. Are we privy to it? No, we've already answered that. What do you do? What do you do when you are not even privy to the existence of a plan? I mean, that question, I don't understand it, because in my mind, there's always a plan. Of course, we don't always know the plan or how long it's going to take or what path it's going to take, but there's definitely always a plan. God is just not just sitting there chilling with his thumbs like, I think maybe I'll do this today. No. He always knows the beginning to the end.
But that's her point.
I think
God knows the beginning to the end, and we know the end, salvation. That is the loose of the plan. Now, how we get there, the steps of how we get there, have we been given tidbits? Yes. How we given some bit of instructions? Yes. Leadership in certain individuals? Yes. But in terms of, I think what she's saying, does God always not the existence, but the first portion, privy to the plan? I think you're right. No. And in terms of the existence of a plan, from our limited view, again, perspective, that question can go either way, because you can say, yeah, okay, from my perspective, I know God wants to make sure that I'm rejoicing with Him in heaven, along with my friends, my family. But what is the path to get there? What is the path to get into the land of milk and honey? What is the path? What is the plan, if we're going to take these examples, for John the Baptist when he says, I'm not feeling the jail cell. I don't like cold steel on my wrist.
And here's another thing, and Anika has said it before, if God reveals His plan to us, we will alter it. If God had told the Israelite, we'll try, or we'll give him other suggestions. We'll
invite Hagar to come and visit.
Oh, mercy. If God had revealed to the Israelites when they left Egypt, they would be in the wilderness for 40 years, you think they would have left? No.
Well, that wasn't his...
Yeah, I don't think that was his plan.
That was his intention.
That was his original plan, but when they got out and they started grumbling and complaining, I sent the plagues never touched you. I opened up a body of water, and you walked through, and the people chasing you, when they got there, it closed.
Big whale on the side.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, but how does that relate to my inability to get food and water to bathe? Those two are unrelated. Thank you very much. I'm grateful for that, but right now I'm hungry.
It's coming. Have faith. Be patient. Okay. And those are things that they didn't have, and we don't have either. Okay. And that's how come we always end up in trouble, because we don't have patience to wait for God's timing and His plan, and we try to go and do things our way. We end up in Hagar. Yeah. And then she went to Sarah. Sarah went to her, wanted her to have a baby. Then she had this baby. Then she mistreated her. Yes, Hagar. Started smelling herself, and I had the baby. But you asked her to do it. If you haven't had to do it, she wouldn't have had the baby. She just committed to be a servant, wash the clothes, and do her daily duties. Mm-hmm. But you told her to go sleep with this man.
But you know what though? Like, I think that it builds trust in us. Like, there are certain friends. If they're driving, they might get a little reckless, but I know once I'm in the car, I'm safe with them. If it's somebody else's car and they start doing the same thing, I might be like, let me put my seatbelt on, because I don't trust you. And I think once you build up that, and it takes time. It takes time. For me, it's taking time for me to fully just go, okay, God, you got it. But I think through the different trials that we're going through, we learn to trust God, and eventually we get to the point where something might come up and we might just be like, okay, you got it. Like, as long as I'm on the right, as long as I'm in the car with God, regardless of what happens, I trust that I'm okay.
Would you be okay, Vexilla, and anybody else, if there was no plan? If you discovered at the end of the day there was no plan, would you be faithful to God?
Yes.
What does
I think
in the absence of a plan?
I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that.
I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying there isn't. But I'm getting to the point of, does it even matter? Do you even need to know that there is one?
So I want to go back. Can I still go back to her first question?
Yes.
While she's whoever asked the question.
Victor.
Oh yeah.
It's almost to the bottom now.
Okay.
Just over dented.
I want to give 4 verses that have helped me, because I've asked that question before. And I'm sure they probably may be familiar. You may be familiar with them, or maybe not. And then I want to go back to the Joseph story, because that has been very helpful. Mm-hmm. So the first verse is Jeremiah 29:11, and it's, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans prosper you and not to harm you, to give you the future that you hope for." So he already knows that. He says, "I know the plans I have for you." And then the second one is Proverbs 3:5-6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. So he already knows the plan he has for you. If you trust him, he will direct your path. The third one is Matthew 6, and I don't even know, I can't remember what verse is, maybe 33, I don't know. But it says, take no thought for tomorrow. For tomorrow, like, sufficient into the day evil. It has its own worries. Like, just focus on me, and pretty much everything else that that you need taken care of is going to be taken care of. I'm literally summarizing it, but it's in Matthew chapter 6. So trust. I know the plans I have for you. Trust in me, and I'm going to orchestrate your paths. I'm going to direct your paths. Don't even worry about tomorrow. Just focus on me. And then the last one is Romans chapter 8, which says all things are going to work together for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So trust. I know the plans I have for you. They're all going to work out for your good. And I see your question about micro plans. I understand that, and I'm getting to that with the Joseph story. I'm talking about, and this includes all of that. So I know those plans. Just trust in me, and I'm going to make your path straight. Don't worry about any of those things, because I know what you need, and everything is going to work together for your good. So now, with all of, and there's many, many more, but I just wanted to highlight those 4. So going back to Joseph's story, one of the things that I learned in trusting and all of that is sometimes I wanted to know, well, what is that micro plan? I understand all of that. What is that small little plan? And going to Joseph's story is what we were just talking about. Even in the little, when the baker and the cupbearer were in the cell with him, what if he never spoke to them? What if he never interpreted their dreams? He may not have ever been called out of that prison. And what I learned is sometimes I just ask God, what is it that you want me to do today? What is it that you want me to do right now in this moment? Sometimes it's just a person I need to speak to that just changes my entire trajectory. And we always want to know the big plan. We want to know, what is it you want, what's my purpose? What is you want my overall life goal to be? Like, what is that we don't need to know all of that. Sometimes we just, God, what is it you need me to do today? This person is sitting next to me. Do I need to speak to them? Is it it comes through the relationship. It comes through just talking to God and communing with God and just listening to the Holy Spirit. And that's really what God is asking. Just listen to me. And that's the small little thing that we need to learn to do. Listen to God, be obedient. And when God says, just go over there, I can't tell you the number of times things have happened to me just because of a small conversation that I almost didn't even, I'll just give one example. I was sitting on a plane. I was traveling out of state, and someone asked, it was Southwest. You know how Southwest, you have to do those sign up, and then you get your seat, you board.
Oh, your boarding pass.
Your boarding thing, baby C, and if you don't sign it, check in early, you get like the C. So it so happened that this mother needed to sit next to her child, so she was in the C section, and there were only middle seats left. And so they were asking, is anybody willing to change seats? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm right in the front of the plane. And God said, just volunteer your seat. Because if I volunteered my seat, it would have been the middle seat next to me and the window seat. And I was like, I do not feel like moving. God said, volunteer your seat. That's it. It's the little things of listening. And I said, okay. So I got up and I volunteered my seat, and I moved midway back to the plane, and I ended up sitting next to this lady who was crying. I was like, oh my gosh. If you know anything about me, I don't like talking to anybody on the plane. But I was like, oh, and God said, talk to her. I was like, nope.
You see, I listened once, I moved my seat.
I said,
that's
nope.
it.
Not doing it. Not doing it. And whole flight, I'm like, no, it's to talk. I'm like, no. So I pulled out a little piece of paper and I wrote down, I hope that everything's okay. I never even knew nothing was okay with this girl. She cried the whole flight. It was like to Denver, Colorado, like 3 hours. Like she cried the whole time. And I'm like, she's still crying. And so she kept crying. I was like, oh, I just wrote her a note and I put my number. I said, if you ever need to talk, call me. So I was like, I'm going to wait until we land when we get ready to get off the plane. So we getting off, we picked everything up, and I was like, I noticed that you weren't okay. I just want to give you a note. If you ever need to talk, call me. And I'm getting ready to get off, and I was like, sorry, we're unable to deplane. I was like, so now we're in this awkward situation. And we sit back down, and I was like, now talk to her. So I talked to her.
He gave you 3 hours to talk to her.
Yeah, I did it. And I talked to her, and we had a nice conversation, and we spoke, and she ended up calling me that night. And we spoke on the phone, and she actually lives 10 minutes from my house.
Wow.
And we still to this day talk.
Look at that.
And it's been almost 2 years.
Look at
and
that.
What happened was it was a bad situation. Anyway, I won't share it. It was a bad situation. We still to this day talk, and I've been walking alongside this person.
Amen.
And she said she really needed someone. And throughout, like, for a long time, her mother ended up passing away. Within the last couple of years, I was there with her. She has no family here. And she said she really needed somebody to talk to. And if I never got up from my seat, and I'm saying it's the little things, a lot of times we want to see the big picture, but God is just saying, be obedient to the small things. And a lot of times you'll end up walking in your purpose. You'll end up finding the path that God wants you on. And I know that was a long explanation, but just ask God, just listen to the Holy Spirit and ask God what the little thing is, because truly He will lead you on the path to righteousness. But just take it for what it is. He knows the plan. He will lead you. Just trust Him. All things will work together for your good. And what's the other one? Don't worry about tomorrow.
I would like to add, because Priscilla asked, my concern is how do we make this lesson applicable to 2018, which I think you tried to address there. I recognize the need to trust God. However, many people walk through life not knowing their purpose in life, while many know almost from the beginning. I would like to argue that, using the Joseph story, that Joseph he had no idea what his purpose was. And when he ended up in Egypt, in jail, but ended up in Potiphar's house, he thought that was his life for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
I would like to argue that. I don't know that for sure, but my guess is he did not say, I'm going to just ride this out till I become second to Pharaoh. That was not in his cards. He saw himself being a slave, and he settled into being
the best slave.
Faithful as a slave. I would like to submit in an agreement, wholehearted agreement with Anika, but just capturing it in a phrase that I got from one of my lecturers, that faithfulness is enough.
Yeah.
Just being faithful to whatever God is putting in front of me is enough. Because when I do that, God can use me in His plan. We've been reading the book of Acts, and so Paul decides. This is one story with the demon-possessed girl who was calling behind Paul, and I think it was either Silas or Barnabas. I think it was Barnabas. And she was annoying the heck out of Paul. And Paul decided he was going to turn around and curse the demon out and cast the demon out of the young lady, right? As he does that, the people who own the young lady, because she was a slave, are upset because she was a cash cow for them. And they take Paul for ruining their business and throw him in jail. From that experience, a man gets to know who Jesus is. The jailer and his whole family get saved because Paul responded to that lady. Paul didn't know that God was trying to send him to this lady. But if you read the story, Paul got it in his mind that he should go to some place to Asia to preach. And the Holy Spirit blocked him. This is what the story says. The Holy Spirit blocked him from going here, and it blocked him from going there. And then he got a dream to go to Macedonia. So he's on his way to Macedonia to help somebody. And while he's just doing his thing on his way to that, he gets rerouted, courtesy of this demon-possessed girl, into the prison to rescue, so to speak, the jailer and his family. Paul That's not on Paul's mind. That wasn't his plan.
Most definitely not.
His plan was actually to go wherever to Asia to preach, and the Holy Spirit blocked him, and he was available. And that's one of the things I wanted to add. Being available to be used is enough about in the plan. Let's take Ananias in the book of Acts, because we've just been reading.
Yeah.
We just come out of Acts.
Yeah.
Ananias didn't want to go and lay hands on Paul. He didn't want to do that. Paul was trying to kill people. So when Paul gets blind and the Lord said, I'm sending you to this guy, God calls the guy and says, I need you to go here. He didn't know, he didn't want to do that. So to me, one of the key things about the plan and being faithful and not, let me double back. I don't even think it's necessary personally to know the plan. To know that there is a plan.
Okay.
Simply being available to do whatever God wants, whenever He wants, however He wants, is enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always
Valid.
Because when I do that, He can create the plan however He wants to create the plan. And you don't know who or what He's trying to do and how and what He's trying to do it. And it really shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter. Let's take Philip in the book of Acts. We saw the way the Spirit was moving with those people. He said, walk down the road by so, and just keep walking. I'm going to tell you what to do when you reach. He ended up walking. There's a guy reading his Bible by the side of the road. He talked to the guy, baptized the guy.
That's it.
Poof, he gone again.
Disappear.
You understand? You don't. Sometimes knowing your purpose is good, but I would argue that it's not necessary.
Yeah.
I agree.
Faithfulness is enough.
And sometimes we don't realize it's not just us. Like God is answering your prayer. God is answering your prayer. God is answering your prayer and your prayer. He might need you to answer His prayer.
Yeah.
He might need you to answer your prayer. And we're so busy, like, but what about me?
Me.
But God's like, I need you for her. But God, what? But
It's
I
a bigger picture.
But I need,
Yeah.
Just do
and
what I
we're
say.
so-
Just do it.
Just that's it.
Oh, Lauren, the verse that you wanted me to share with you was Jeremiah chapter 15 from verse 15
What did she say?
to
You about to make
to
me
20.
shot on those?
when you were reading those verses, yeah.
But when you brought up the Paul thing, I was thinking like there was, I don't know if it's the same story. I don't remember if it's the same story, but there was at one point when he was in the jail, when the earthquake happened, the gates were open, and the jailer was about to kill himself, and Paul was like, "You don't have to kill yourself.
I'm right here.
Wow.
We're all
Here.
accounted for."
Wow.
And the guy was like, somewhere along the line, the guy wanted to know more about Jesus. And to me, like I wrote it down at the side of the Bible. I was like, man, it's crazy what happens when, even in an opportunity where, if I was in jail and doors were open,
I'm gone.
Like, thank you, God. I'm out.
Pray, I'm screaming praise.
Right.
I'm leaving. Thank
all the
you,
way
Jesus.
out. But sometimes it's like, if you would just sit still and just be obedient to God's voice, you have no idea what's hanging in the balance of you being obedient.
Which goes back to my verse, Matthew 16 verse. You don't have in mind the concerns of God.
Yeah.
Concerns of God is really just that you would be faithful to Him. That's it. Just love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. That requires being faithful to whatever He asks. Getting to know Him, spending time with Him, and doing what He says. That's it. That's
I like
his.
what Keith
to
said
me-
right here.
Okay, go ahead.
If we were privy to God's plan in its entirety, we probably wouldn't believe it or
Wow.
understand it.
Wow.
Did Paul understand the plan after he was converted?
So I like that you say that. One of the verses that stood out to me in the last conversation we had, and I'm going to bring it up here, is Acts chapter 20. I think Paul had an understanding of something. I don't know that he understood the plan. But I would say Paul was different because God told him, I needed you to do this particular thing. I need you to be a light to the Gentiles. He was aware of how he was going to be used. He was aware.
And the fact that he still followed it unquestionably with everything that happened to that man afterwards. I mean, from the moment he was struck blind, that man's life was not easy. He restored his sight. That was okay. Praise the Lord. But after that, you think of how many times he was jailed, the persecution that he went through, the friends of this man, the people that he once worked for in hunting Christians now are hunting him because he is now following God's plan. So that's very interesting when he says, if that's why I was saying, did he know the entire plan? Because that's not something many people would sign up for.
But I would argue that Paul, before he was converted, was doing the exact same thing he was doing after he's converted, which was being as faithful as he could to his understanding of what God wanted for him. Now, he was misguided clearly in the first instance, but all he did, once he got the correct information of what he needed to be doing, he was committed to being faithful to God. And he was, I would argue that he was stamping out the Christians because he was attempting to be faithful to God. These people were preaching heresy, and faithfulness to God is to eradicate that heresy. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it. Once he gets course corrected, he takes that same faithfulness posture and now applies it to the task that's been assigned to him.
Maybe that's my lack of not reading the entire story of Paul, but when you say, okay, in terms of being misguided, he thought that directive was from God.
Yeah, he thought he was doing the work of God. Paul thought he was doing God's work when he was rounding up Christians and throwing them in jail and killing them. That was his belief. And that's when God had to, under Damascus Road, say, well, why are you persecuting me? That's when he changed. But yeah, where will be?
Matthew.
Oh yeah, Matthew. I know Acts 20.
Acts.
Yeah, but we already answered it. He knew.
Oh.
He says very clearly, verse 22. Let's go from 20. You know that I have not hesitated to preach anything that will be helpful. You know that I have not hesitated to preach anything that will be helpful to you, but have taught publicly from house to house. I have declared to both Jews and Greeks that they must turn to God in repentance and have faith in our Lord Jesus. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I am going to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. I only know that in every city the Holy Spirit warns me that prison and hardships are facing me. However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's grace. Now I know that none of you among whom I have gone about preaching the kingdom will ever see me again. Therefore I declare to you today that I am innocent of the blood of any of you, for I have not hesitated to proclaim to you the whole will of God. That sounds like a man who was clear about what he wanted.
I mean, if God told me that, I would have been like, no, thank you.
He is a rare instance in where the plan was revealed to him, and he was ride or die.
I would have, yes, because Joseph didn't know the plan. Joseph didn't know the plan. He didn't have a clue.
He had no clue.
No.
Whatsoever.
He wasn't even expecting to come out of jail.
Was to end up in the position that he ended up in.
When I think about like the relevance in today's day and age, like I'll use myself as an example. Sometimes I feel like the job that I'm at, it's not necessarily what I'm called to do. And there's been times where I'm like, God, this is not the plan, and I would like to move into the plan because I'm not getting any younger. I feel like we're wasting time here. Like the world's winding up. I need to move into my plan. But one of the things that I'm starting to realize is where I am right now, that there is a plan for it, and there are opportunities, divine appointments, as you might say, where in this small area, something that I don't necessarily want to be in, or a place where I don't necessarily want to be in, God has a purpose in that place, and until I accomplish that purpose, He can't push me. He won't put me in something else, because there are lives that need to be impacted. There are things that need to be accomplished. So for me, it's in this day and age, I don't know my grand purpose. I still don't know what I'm necessarily called to do. I know that I'm not I don't feel like I am doing it now, but I feel like I'm constantly reminded that there are things that you need to accomplish on the way.
I want to push back on you because sometimes I think our purpose may change at times, and maybe you are in your purpose.
Maybe
and then,
I just don't see
it. Maybe you are, and then sometimes your purpose may change. Like, for example, I don't know if you're not married, right?
No.
Okay, so maybe if that happens, that's your purpose at that point, and then God sends you somewhere else, and then you have another purpose, and then you have another purpose, and then you have another purpose. I think sometimes we think we have one thing we're supposed to accomplish, and that's our purpose. But I don't think that's how God sees things.
That may be true for some people.
And right, for everybody. I don't think that's how God sees things for every single person on this earth. Like, I feel like in my life, I've accomplished many things that God wanted me to do. And I need you for this purpose, Anika. And then I need you for this purpose. And I need you for this purpose. He might use you for many different things. And I think we have to be open, like Jared said, just be faithful and be willing to see that what do you want? What do you want of me? And I'm just willing. And
I would even argue that is each of our purpose.
That's it.
To be available, to be used by God, to do whatever He wants, wherever He wants, however He wants, whenever He wants.
And I think that just do that, and you will see that you may not. And I think, honestly, that there's so many things that God has used us for that we may not ever be aware of until we enter heaven. You may not ever know what God has done through you on this side. You may not ever see it, and that's okay. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah. So I guess I'll word it this way. I don't necessarily see the purpose in it, but little bits and pieces of hints. God will be like, listen, there's a plan, there's a reason, just relax. So
I'm gonna tell you a small story about me. So I left Trinidad knowing that I had an experience in Trinidad that brought me to the awareness that God wanted to use me. He didn't say how, but I knew it involved people who were on the fringes of Christianity, who were here but not really there, who were young adult and professional. And it involved helping them getting to know Jesus for themselves so that He could utilize their gifts and their talents for them to know Him and reveal Him to others. Partly because there was this understanding, this misinformed understanding that service for God has to happen within a church ministry. And it's not necessarily the kingdom mindset of serving where you are with the things that God has given to you to use to do, baking, talking to people on the plane,
It's not my ministry. It's not.
He's working it up into
So I'm signed on to go to America to do this thing, because you had to eat, you had to pay the bills. So what can I do? So I start trying to apply for jobs. Nobody
want to hire you.
I learned afterwards that when you're leaving from a foreign country to come to America, people want to see American experience before they give you a shot. No matter what your experience is overseas, it was overseas, and until you get American experience on your resume, good things not really going to happen for you. So you need to get your foot in the door somewhere. So I think I may have told this part of the story before, but I'm going to tell you the second part. I'm going to add on the second part. So for the time that I was here, I left in 2004, July 2004, I left a job, and I didn't actually resign when I left. I bought a return ticket to Trinidad and left in July. School starts again in September. I was a teacher high school teacher, so that, you know, I had a return ticket to go back in September, in time to start school in September. The day I land, I get to the house, drop off my bag, don't unpack my bag. That was like a Wednesday. Saturday, a friend comes and picks me up. We're going to see some friends over at Metro, and the day didn't go very well. I end up getting out of the car to go and see a friend, and the car I was in, the girl drives off with my bag in it because she has to drop a car for her brother, and he has an appointment, he's waiting over at the church. So I ended up having to walk from where I was over to Metro. Say, can I make sure I can get my bag? Yeah, you'll pick it up. Sometime later in the night, the guy said, did y'all come and take stuff out of the car? He calls his sister. No, we didn't take anything out of the car because everything on the car is gone. The car is clean.
Uh-oh.
And I will say the car was not a clean car. There was a lot of stuff in the back. Everything is gone. So I get there on Wednesday. By Saturday, my return ticket is gone. Passport is gone. Social security card is gone. Everything that was important, documents, travel documents, gone.
Whoa.
Day one. I don't have no money. A little bit of money I had run out. I'm living in my father's house. I was working, but you know, now I'm here and I'm not working. I don't have money to buy deodorant. I need to ask him where I was able to turn my own key and do my own thing before. It was uncomfortable. And I had to ride out the whole summer like that. Labor Day weekend, my dad decides he's going to see his mother in Louisiana. Come go. I ain't doing nothing. Nobody ain't hiring me. So I'm gonna go. I go, and my grandmother, who was supposed to have been dying, was not in the nursing home. She went to Walmart with the people from the nursing home on a trip for the day. She went from almost death to sprightly and alive. My sister ended up flying up from Florida. My stepmother comes from Maryland. And we had this nice time with her. Only to find out while I was there that she's been praying since I've been 5 years old to see her grandchildren before she dies.
Wow.
I don't get a job here in Maryland to make sure that I was available Labor Day weekend to answer this lady's prayer. I get back to Maryland, come home from church after hearing a sermon in church. The guy preached a sermon, Come See a Man. The sermon was entitled Come See a Man. And in the Come See a Man, it was, come see the Lord working in the life of this man. And I heard clearly from God, I'm going to use you through your experiences to reveal me to other people. It's like, all right, cool. I go home. There's a call for an interview on Monday as I come home from church. Circuit City. I'm going to take it. I have to work on Sundays. I don't want to work weekends at all, but this is the American way. You have to work weekends in retail.
Yeah.
The guy accepted my Seventh-day Adventist thing. His parents were Seventh-day Adventists, so I ended up getting that blessing. While I'm at Circuit City, I realized that God was using the experience of Circuit City to put some stuff out of me. I was kind of withdrawn and not a people person. So when people come up to me, I wasn't the one to walk up to you and say, hey, how you going? I'm going to sit in the corner in the back, and if you come and you talk to me, you talk to me. If you don't, you don't. And because of my heavy Trinidadian accent, I wasn't as clear and articulate as I could have been. Circuit City was, I need you to work that out.
Work the accent out?
Work being able to communicate out.
Yeah,
because when you come different, when the white lady comes in, she needs to be able to understand you. When the African guy comes in, he needs to be able to understand you. When the Haitian lady comes in, she needs to be able to understand you. And when the person from DC who comes in and says, huh? Comes in.
Hold on. How come DC's the only one who got an example?
Huh? It's like a horn.
Nobody else got an example but the DC people.
You say something and they go, huh? Don't they do that?
Huh?
Oh my.
When I became friendly and customer service oriented oriented and was willing to
I
engage
cannot
people.
imagine Jared sitting in the corner.
When that became second nature to me, I got another job. And that has been my experience. All of my experiences have been shaping and molding me for the thing that he wanted me to do. That if he had told me when I left Trinidad that's what he wanted me to do, I would have never left.
Yeah, if you knew you were gonna work at Circuit City, you'd have stayed your happy hips.
If I knew he wanted me to pastor somebody's church, I would have stayed in Meditative in Trinidad. And I've seen where he's molded me and shaped me and things that would equip me for that plan before telling me that that was the plan. And it wasn't until I got to the place of understanding lordship and saying whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want, because you are Lord. Then he introduced me to, so I kind of might want you a little bit to consider being a pastor. That's kind of where I wanted to lead you the whole time. I couldn't tell you that because then you would have run away like Jonah and never come back. But I was already in the place of whatever you want, however you want, wherever you want. And so that has been my experience. I say that to say that sometimes it's not necessary to know the plan. And sometimes in the place that you're in, he's not only working for other people, but he's also working some things out of you. Because in that when I was at Circuit City, there was this guy who came in new, and I helped to train him. And I was doing really well, and I was due for the team lead position. This guy came in and started to sell all kind of numbers, and he got the team lead position. I'm like, well, dude, what's going on? I mean, at least in my head, that's what I was thinking. And then God kind of said to me, and I kind of heard him audibly, just allow him to do that. I have a plan for him, and I have a plan for you. And that's, you just continue working on being articulate. You just do that. Now, it turned out that the guy was conducting a racket and ended up getting taken off of the place, and in handcuffs one day. I still didn't get the team lead position. But what it taught me afterwards was that, like you said, God is a God of everybody, and he's working out everything for everybody. Why do you need that? He probably needed that more than I did, particularly since where he wanted to take me was not Circuit City. He didn't plan for me to stay at Circuit City. Circuit City was a grooming place for me that I didn't understand. I thought it was just a way to pay the bills. He was saying, I know I need to groom some things in you that this environment will do, and I will navigate your path to groom you and groom some things out of you that I need to, which is what he was doing with the children of Israel in the desert. I'm bringing this back to where we started. They were coming through the desert because they had some bad ways that they inherited in Egypt while they were there, that he needed to get out to bring them to the place of faithfulness to him.
Land. He couldn't take them with that mess in the promised land.
Correct.
Valid point.
The same thing with us. Like,
he can't take us to heaven with our sinful ways.
I walk through the church now and hey, how you doing? Happy Sabbath to everybody I see. Me, I would have just walked through the church and sit
straight to your seat and walk back out at the end of the day.
How are you going to use me to lead people like that? That was 2004.
Between 2004 and 2006.
That's 14 years ago, man. 14 years later, now he's saying, yeah, I think he might be.
Isn't that about how long Joseph was in his 14 years?
So I say that to people who don't know their purpose. Faithfulness is enough. I'm not just saying that because the dude said it and it was good. But when you are simply faithful to the experience that you are in, to making the most of the experience that you are in and being aware of what God wants from you, just in that situation alone, he will do what is necessary to move the plan along. And if he determines to reveal it to you in time, he will. And if he doesn't, faithfulness is still enough. So I just wanted to, yes, I had to drop my dross first, sorry. Yes, I had to do that. We're still working on that t-shirt. Maybe about time to close up. I know I took a while to bring those points together, but I wanted to provide illustrations, particularly for you and Bexilla, because I heard you say you didn't know what your purpose was. My purpose was in Circuit City. For a while, I thought maybe management in Circuit City was my purpose. But I did the management training, and then he moved me. But management training gave me some crucial skills for managing my time and being all these kinds of things and being over people, and that was, you know, cross applicable to what God wants for me. I didn't see it, I didn't know it, and that was in 2004, so I didn't think that there was any connection to it. I thought that was where he was taking me, and so okay, well, I'll become a manager at Circuit City. But it wasn't that. He was doing some other things, you know, and so be faithful where you are and allow him to use you however he wants, and then he will reveal what he needs from you. All of us get stuck because we want to see the end. We want to know how this particular thing relates
to another thing.
Just be faithful right here. Just do what he's asking right here, and that is enough.
And I agree with Jared. In knowing your purpose, I think, you know, growing up, my mother always worked with kids, and so I always had a passion for kids. But when I went to college, you know, as an 18-year-old, I'm like, I can't be caught inside four walls and trapped inside of a classroom. I'm a free spirit. I need to be free and spread my wings and fly. So I was hell-bent against being an educator. And so I started off as a social work major when I first started at university. And I did a practicum with a social worker in Baltimore. I was at Morgan. And, you know, I'm riding along with her. You know, she's taking people's kids away. People are cussing and threatening her. And I'm like, as a 19-year-old, my eyes got this big. You know, I grew up in this little Seventh-day Adventist community. Even I grew up in Southeast DC, so I saw some things, but nothing like that. And so I quit school. And then one Sabbath, a lady asked me to teach Sabbath school at church. One Sabbath while she went on vacation. I did it for 7 years straight.
Wow.
And in that time, and like you saying, God was preparing you for something in Circuit City. He was preparing me to be the educator that I am today. Because, you know, some people just show up to Sabbath school. I took pride in my class. I decorated the door. I knew all the kids' birthdays. The kids who didn't come to Sabbath school, I found them in church, gave them their little friend. You know, boy, back in the day, we still did 13 Sabbath. I prepared the kids with all their memory verses. You know, I was on top of it. As teachers, we invest money. I invested money in that Sabbath school class. I never asked, you know, church for any money. And then one of the parents, she was like, you have to go back to school, Davina. And I was just like, I can't, I'm not a teacher. They're like, but what are you doing here? And so in those 7 years, God was preparing me for something. And now that I'm 13 years into my career, I think I can't imagine doing anything else except what I'm doing. And what if I hadn't listened to God? What if I had continued to on a social work path? What if I hadn't, you know, what if I had just taught the Sabbath school 1 week and said, okay, you're back. I'll see y'all later. What if, you know, I never went back to school to finish my degree? What if I just kept working at Target and, you know, the grocery store like I was doing? What if, you know? So we don't always understand, you know, where God puts us in different places. But, you know, the question was, does God have a plan? Does he not? I believe he had a plan for my life. You know, I took the Israelites long way around it because, you know, when all my friends at 21 were graduated from college, I was still trying to figure life out. You know, at 24, when all my friends had masters, I was still trying to figure things out. So I took the long way around, but I eventually got there. So I think God definitely has a plan for each one of us. And he takes us on a different path to get there. And along the way, we learn something. You know, at Circuit City, you learned to be articulate, to come to people and to speak. You know, during my years in Sabbath school, you know, God was showing me how to do a lesson plan. You know, how to prepare for a class. Because you don't want to jump in day one and you have a class of 20 kids and you're trying to figure it all out. I got to play around with it in Sabbath school and figure it all out. And so once I got my own class and I had my own kids, I was rolling. It was nothing. No big deal.
Cross application. All right, so Richard, this is the section of the program where we do takeaways. Because we talk about a lot of things and it's a good conversation, but we want to make sure that at least you're walking away with something that's valuable and meaningful to you for the next week, that's relevant to what's going on in your life right now, you know, and we ask you to articulate it, because in articulating it, you own it a little bit more, and you're forced to think about, well, in all the things that we talked about, what did impact me? And so when you articulate it, you own it to take with you, and then we all get the benefit and share from it, because sometimes your takeaway can inspire something for me. And so we're going to go around, and each person is going to share at least one thing from all the things that we talked about that said, like, oh yeah, I'm going to leave with that. That is valuable to me. I'm going to take that home. I'm going to start with Anika and come this way, because Davina was the last person to speak.
Somebody's going to take my thing, I know.
There's no taking of a thing. If it's yours, even if you shared it. Because it might be a point that was powerful for many of us. We might all have the same takeaway. And I'm asking those people who are online to actually share yours as well, so that we can benefit from it as well.
I would say my takeaway is obedience.
See, I
And
told you.
it was really a great reminder that God just wants me to be obedient to Him, and I'm not always. I just want to be obedient and be faithful to God in all things.
You leaving nothing for the others?
I'm going to let you go now.
No. We'll let the gentleman go. I'll come up with something.
Whatever was the point.
In short order, a phrase that is often uttered has taken new meaning in this conversation of let go and let God. In the time we have spent here just discussing this, letting go of trying to understand every little thing He has planned for your life. I have a story to tell, but it is entirely too long to. But suffice to say, letting go and letting God has, even at this moment, led me to this chair in your house to discuss this particular topic.
Wow.
To awaken things that when I walked through that door, I had no clue.
Oh, wow. Praise Him. Praise Him.
For me, it's God is very, very intentional about the little details, and it might seem insignificant to me, but he's extremely intentional with every little thing. Like in Leviticus, when God's like, this person does that, this person carries this, you're gonna do it this specific way, you're gonna cover the ark with this and then cover it with that. Like, God is extremely intentional about the process, and even if I don't understand the process or the grand plan, just be obedient even in the little things, because there's a grand plan there that I'm not always aware of.
Davina?
Okay. Mine is, I was reading the things on here, and Keith said, just like He purged Moses in the desert for 40 years, there's always a process. So my takeaway is trust the process. Trust God's process. And don't, try to interject Davina into God's process. Wherever God is taking me, trust His process. I don't have to be 40 years to get to where He was leading me anyway. And then somebody else wrote, He had to purge those 400 years out of them. Oh, Keith also saying it. He had to purge those 400 years out of them. So I want to trust God to take out of me what needs to be taken out of me, so that He can work through me what He needs to work through me. I don't want to miss heaven because of something that's still in me that He's been trying to get out of me. He's been sending people. He's been sending this experience. He sent Water for the Thirsty. He sent me to RPC. He put John, Mary, Kate, all these people in my life to purge something out of me.
I never thought about that.
And I still won't let it go. And I miss salvation. I miss heaven because I couldn't let that thing go. And he sent all these people and experiences to help me. So I want to let go of whatever it is God needs me to let go of, so that I don't, have to spend 400 years or generation upon I don't want a generational. I'm not having children, but a generational something come along to children who I influence. Not my biological children, because that's not going to happen. But my babies, my students. I don't want to pass anything along to them that could be detrimental to their future. So those are my takeaways. Just piggybacking off of Mr. Keith. Thank you so much, Keith.
So my takeaway, I had a nice succinct phrase for it, so I might have to talk through it to get back to that phrase, because I was paying attention to you. It left me. So I came into this conversation, concerned about the development in a situation. So God has been working some things and reminding me, that's what my phrase was. This conversation reminded me personally to have in mind the concerns of God. And to adjust my perspective to his concerns in every situation, considering that he is not just working for me. And there are lots of people who are, I wouldn't say intertwined with my life, where this, and I would say, house buying process is directly impacting them and their relationship with him. So if he's having to tell that story, come see a man, as I live my life open for people to be a part of and see, as I have to navigate these waters, I have to be reminded that my response to my circumstances and situations and interaction with people is going to be a reflection of the Jesus I am revealing, or I'm being used to reveal. And so I have to keep that in my mind. And so it was helpful to me, just like you came through the door with whatever you came through the door with today, that was helpful for me today. Amen. It was a little vague, because I don't want to give the story to go into detail and keep us here much longer, so I tried to generalize it. But have in mind the concerns of God was reminding me to have in mind the concerns of God was my takeaway. So I'm going to take Lauren. Says, just be available to God, short and sweet. Typically, Lauren writes a small novel for us, and her takeaways. And so she was making a note that today I'm not writing a novel, is what she's essentially saying. Debbie says, faithfulness is enough. Vexella agrees. I'll also co-sign with faithfulness is enough. And Lauren came back with, this session has me singing, Lord, I'm available to you.
Yes.
So,
good song.
Vanessa?
Yeah.
Any takeaways? I know you're off camera, but I think the microphone will pick you up if you speak loudly enough. Just come and stand in the space behind the camera. You don't have to stand in front of the camera, just loud enough that they could hear your voice. Close enough that they could hear your voice.
It was Anika, and the purpose for right now, and not the general purpose, because I've been struggling with that myself. I had a general purpose, and I started working on it, and then I'm like, okay, so what's next? And you just reminded me that there's a bunch of stuff that I'm supposed to be doing right now, and I don't need to hurt my head with the purpose that, I guess I'm looking also for a purpose that gives me money.
That's important.
So now I have this thing when I'm like, Vanessa, you have a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of assignments, a whole bunch of things to do. I'm like, yes, Lord, but none of them are paying me. That's a problem. I don't need a lot. I just need a little bit to contribute to the family, budget. But it was just a reminder of my assignments, to take them seriously, fulfill them, and not be stubborn. And yeah, that's my takeaway.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Sweet, thank you. All right, well, thank you guys for the conversation and for joining in and for all the contributions today. I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to download our reading plan app so that you can, stay abreast with us. It gives you a nice little reminder in the day to spend time with Jesus. And we've updated it so that now it has foreign language support. So if you know somebody who speaks French, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, or Chinese, they can read the Bible in their language straight from the app now. Also, at least on the Android, thanks to Richard, I discovered it hasn't necessarily made it to the iOS version yet, but we've also added the New Living Translation and the New International Version to the English versions of the Bible. So you have a couple more versions to read out of there. Hopefully soon the iOS people can benefit from that as well. But if you want, you could just switch over to the Android phone and, take advantage of that for now.
We don't have it yet.
But in the meantime, you can do that.
But I haven't updated my phone either, so.
Yeah. All right. And then share it with a friend, because it's fun to read the Bible together. There's no point to doing it by yourself. Our process here, as you saw, was study, inquire, dialogue, apply, and share. This is not good if you're not sharing it with somebody else. And so just encourage somebody to read the Bible together with you and let it do its work. Anika, would you pray for us to close?
Okay. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to share with each other the wonderful gems that you've given us in your word. I thank you for all of us who are here and those online, and I ask that you would continue to speak to us, Lord, and remind us how much you love us, and we know that you are with us, God. And I ask that you give us safe traveling mercies home, and God, just allow us to keep these words in our heart, Lord, but also share them with others. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. And thank you to the unusual suspects for joining us tonight and providing rich conversation and insightful, inspiring messages for each of us and to everybody who was listening. So thank you all. And thank you to Richard. Don't make this the last time that you're here. So feel free to come in next time if you're available. We're here every first and third Friday. So.
What's funny is my flight was cancelled today.
Oh wow!
that's the thing. Wow. My flight was cancelled. I'm supposed to be home.
Oh wow!
My flight was cancelled. So as I said,
God had a plan for you.
It was planned.
Mm-hmm.
Wow! And if you know, we had a couple of people who were supposed to be here tonight, and one of them is in Michigan, the other one is in Charlottesville, the other one was having challenges at work that kept them from running late. And so when Anika said she was coming by to drop something off, and she said yes to stay in, we had open spots that you will be like right on time to fill. So
amen.
You didn't even know that was going on, right?
As I said, when I walked interesting thing.
So God did some things here tonight. Wow. We only need. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sabbath, and see you next time. Drink up.
Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
This is water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty. Drink up.
Drink up. Hashtag Instagram, Facebook. We all there. Follow us. Tweet us. I have a mic on right now.
It's been a hard weekend. it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer.